Hi everyone, my name is Paul Apps and welcome to my painting channel. Summer is well on its way, at least we hope so, and I felt that it would be nice to go along to the beach and paint a few figures in the water, Contrejour and fast and loose. So without further ado, let's roll the intro and let's see what happens. Welcome back everybody. As I said at the start, summer really is on its way, and one of the things I do love to do when the weather warms up is to go over to beaches somewhere and take my oils or my watercolors and do a few plein air studies and a few scribbles in my notebook, and I'm sure that's the same for many of you as well. The thing is, when you go to a lovely beach and it's warm and it's sunny, invariably there are going to be a lot of people on the beach enjoying the beach for their own reasons with their families and their children. So you can either make a decision to leave them out of your painting, or you can get to grips with painting a few of those figures in and conveying the sense of summer, fun and all that warmth and that atmosphere that you find at the seaside. So today's video is really all about painting people on the beach in the surf. I've chosen a subject that is Contrejour. More about that as we go along. But also I want to make this fast and loose. So without further ado, let's see how we get on. Okay everybody, so what have I been doing with the paper? Well, as you can see from this, absolutely nothing at all. Now I decided that I wasn't going to draw anything on this paper ahead of time, and I may not even draw during the course of the tutorial. The idea being that I wanted to paint something for you, for want of a better term, that was fast and loose, not an abstract, just fast and loose. And the idea being that the painting will be more spontaneous and it will grow, and let's see how it sort of goes and what it says to us, and we can hopefully end up with a painting very much like the reference photo. But if I felt that if I was to do the drawing ahead of time, it starts controlling, it starts restricting your thought process. It sort of controls you. You know, the applications you do are sort of guided by what you've drawn. So by not drawing, then we're free to see what happens, I suppose, for want of a better way of doing it. The thing is, I'm not suggesting for a minute that you do not draw. If you feel more comfortable drawing the elements in, whether it be just the horizon, the vessels on the horizon, the people in the foreground, none of that really matters. This is just for me to show you today one way of doing it. But I assure you, when I looked at this photograph, there are many ways of painting this, and I will try and talk some of those through with you as we go through the tutorial. I may even do another version of this and using a completely different way of creating it. But for this one, it's no drawing, and we're going to see what happens. Now for my brushes, I have got a 30mm hake brush. Some people call it hake, but the Japanese term is hake. I have a squirrel mop, a medium one. I have two round brushes. These are purely synthetic brushes from Rosemary & Company. This is a inexpensive rigger brush, but it will do the job. And I have a very small Windsor & Newton sable. It's an old one. It's a 0, and it's a sable, as I say, from Windsor & Newton. I'm not sure if I will use many of them or all of them, who knows, but they're out and I have that ability if I wish to do so. All my colors, well, they're set out in the details underneath the comment section under this and all my other videos, but I have gone along and I've used a spray bottle and I've just reactivated the surfaces of the paint ready to go, so I do not have to struggle to mix some of the colors. So let's get on. Okay, now I am going to be mixing up first and foremost. I'm going to use this to mix the color, but I'll apply it with the hake brush. So what I wanted to do, the sky in the reference photo, it has to be said, is lovely, summery, but it is absolutely, there's just no life in it. Now I thought about this long and hard. Do I put a sky in, or do I try and make it as it is? I feel that the figures do hold the painting, but I do want to put a bit more information in the sky. Otherwise, I would have tackled this in a very different way. Okay, I'm going to come in with a simple wash, very, very faint wash of some lovely raw sienna. Now, on top of that, and it's quite, you can see how weak it really is. A lot of water, little paint, just enough to stain and colour the painting. And I'm also going to mix up some Cobalt Blue. My favourite blue for blue skies, certainly in summertime. Could add a little bit of Phthalo blue to that. That's probably a little too aggressive. See how strong that phthalo really is. So come back in with another mix and put in some more cobalt to one side. Okay, so this is pretty much dry. It's certainly dry enough along here to go and carry on with, and I've got to start mixing up the colours for my sea. Now this is where you do need to have a little bit of dry brush for that glisten, and you have to be a little careful as you come down through here to the foreshore. Okay, first then we're going to mix up our sea colour, and we're going to be using a fair bit of water, but we want it a little thicker than the washes we were using just now. And so I'm using some ultramarine blue, quite a bit of it coming in, and then I'm going to temper that down with some phthalo blue. But we have a blue now which is pretty, lovely blue, but it's way too blue for our sea on the reference, so we need to temper it and play around with that. I'm going to actually add in a bit of the Schminker neutral tint colour. Now that makes a very dirty, very grey, and that could well, once that dries, become our sea. I think that's quite a nice colour. But is it the right colour still? Not sure. I think it's a good colour for the back of the sea, where it's meeting the horizon line. But we can make it paler as it comes down here. So we have a nice thick colour. Going to mix a little thicker before we get going. Just add a little bit more of the blues in. A little bit more of that neutral tint coming into play. I think that really greys it down. Just double check once more. I think we're fairly where we want to be. Now I'm going to take a lot of that pigment out of the brush. I'm going to use a piece of paper towel. I'm going to take off a lot of the paint out of this brush. I'm going to come carefully across here. See, that's almost too much taken out. You've got to try and find that little bit of balance. What you're trying to do is a nice steady line across the top of your horizon line, taking it up to where the sky begins, as it were, and as you come through here you just want to let it break off. Now as we come down, we've got our sea, as I say, we have our broken glisten and skipping with the dry brush, and now I want to use that even more as it comes down here, and I want to add a little bit more water to my blue grey. So take a lot of it off out of your brush and just come on through here, and you get that lighter phase of the sea, but I still want that lovely glisten as much as I can to push through. Lovely glistening. And now I'm looking at to see where the waves are, and there is one wave I want to put in through here. So I want to leave a little bit of light this way and allow for that. is I'm going to come in with a smaller brush. I want to mix up a slightly paler colour that will be our headland that runs through the background. Now I'm going to use some of this blue, very, very weak solution, doesn't need to be very strong. And I'm just going to come in here with that little bit of the headland all the way through at the top there. Taking that all the way through here. Try and pay attention to the shapes of the headland, because if you're painting in a certain area, it does really need to sort of conform to what is there and not become too randomly away from the reality of the scene. Just take that in. I'm going to leave a little bit of that light from the sky right at the bottom, catching that sort of ephemeral light that runs along. Okay, carrying on with the smaller round brush, I'm just going to start putting in a few bits of detail on the waves coming in. So I'm going to use some of this blue that we've been using, some of that phthalo, some of that ultramarine, just making pretty much the same colour we built up for the sea. Adding into that some sienna. I want to make that warmer. Actually, I'm going to come in with a little bit of raw sienna too. Make that a bit of dirty old green colour, and I want to run that through where some of the wave is coming in. Just little dry brush marks, very, very quick, very spontaneous, just to see, and that suggests that we got that wave coming in, adding in maybe a little bit more of the yellow colour. Then we're going to use the larger round. This is a, I can't see which one this is now, but it is probably about an 8 or a 10. Just want to come in here now and put in some of our sand colour. Now I'm mixing some of that blue into it as well. That makes not a lot of problem, but I don't want it too watery. I want quite a thick consistency. I don't want this fading too much. I'm going to drop in, I'm going to bring it up in places to the edge, but I want to leave a nice little body of white, which is that little bit of foamy stuff on the water. Take that through there. And we are just suggesting our beach now. Okay, so this is pretty much dried off, ready to go. And I'm going to start mixing some colours for our figures. Now, first and foremost, they need to be very strong. So if you put on a colour that is sort of dark, like say a sepia, but if it's too watery, then it's not going to make any impact at all. When that dries, that's going to be very, very wishy-washy and pale. What you've got to do is come in with your dark, but make it really strong from the get-go. So I'm going to come in with a few dark colours. I love the blues and make a dark blue. Quite thick, very little water. I can come back in. Let's have another mix. Let's come in with some nice indigo. Very dark colour. But to that I will add another pile here. So I'm making several colour piles. And I'm going to come in with some of my oranges. And that really warms up that colour. So you can make a real gutsy dark. But there's not a lot of water in there. I can tip this and it will start flowing this way. These will not move on that China palette. But I'm going to use a very small brush for this. I can use the rigger, or I can use this very, very small pointy brush, which is a 0. And for the figures out in the water, I'm going to precisely use that. Now they're quite warm. So I'm going to mix a little bit of these two together. And I'm just going to literally study what's in front of me and just try and place a few figures. Let's start with this person out in the water here. Just a little shape. And then a body coming down maybe, and then they got the arm out. Let's just put that down. I'm not sure if this is turning out too well. It's got quite a bit of I'm going to leave that one like that, I think. Just put an arm down there like that. Somebody else in the water, very close by, swimming, I think, like that. And people walking out to them, maybe. I think there's a little boat or something, a little rubber boat out there. Let's just put that in. And let's put somebody on the back of that. Just little taps, little shapes, little forms. Nothing too much, nothing too heavy. Just trying to convey people out there having a bit of fun in the waves. I feel that the real trick to the observation of adding figures in this manner where I haven't actually drawn them is purely observation. It's purely looking at the reference, seeing the shapes and trying to recreate the shapes, not thinking of them too much as people, looking at the shapes and trying to form them. And even if you start with a little bit of a mark here, a little bit of a mark there, you can add to it as I'm doing with this boat. It was clearly not big enough, not deep enough, but by adding a little bit more information, having first set it up and first put it there, then you can refine that shape. And that's what I've done with a few of these figures across the whole of the sea in this area, is just added to the marks that I initially made. So just a little hesitation as I work out exactly where I wanted to start these two figures. They're not quite the main figures, but they do represent major figures in this painting. There's a husband and a wife kneeling in the water, and she is clearly holding a young child and sort of allowing it to sort of dabble its feet in the lovely warm summer water. And I wanted to get that right. I wanted to get the size of them right, the placement right, and so I took a little bit of time with a little hesitation before I actually started. Very easy to get the figures like this incorrect or very wrong or badly placed on your canvas, so it is worth taking that extra little bit of time. But I am feeling my way. I'm making a little tap here. I'm making a little head shape. This is the lady. She's got a hat on, and I'm just making a little shape and a little touch with the brush, and I can fill out on that. I can add to that detail. I'm clearly not trying to create the outline. I'm feeling my way, and hopefully the shape that I see in the water will be clearly marked by the brush marks that I'm creating now. And the little child she's holding, a little baby, a little newborn almost, just sort of outstretched arms and holding it ready to sort of let its feet dabble in the water. I think that was quite cute, but I felt that I wanted to convey that and get that right, and I think I managed it okay, but it wasn't a case of trying to draw the outline of the figures. That's what I'm trying to get over to you. I clearly just make a little mark, and then I work on that and build that out until I feel, quite honestly, that I've got the shape that I am looking for. Okay, now these three lads that are trying to save their lovely sandcastle from the ever advancing waves. They are now deciding whether they're going to try and continue that effort or just give up and enjoy the water. The thing is that for me, they are the stars of the show. They have created the narrative that I like to find in a painting. That little bit of a story, that little bit of interaction with real life. And indeed, the parents to their left with the little child have given a sort of narrative. They have sort of given further evidence of a lovely summer's day with a family at the beach. But these little lads, they are just having a whole heap of fun, and you can see what they've been up to and what they're trying to do and deciding whether to carry on that massive effort. But what I'm doing now is putting a little bit of reflection in. Now reflections come toward you. They will go toward the viewer, and that's what I'm trying to make sure that my reflections head towards me and nowhere else. And they are not drawn lines, they are literally brush marks that I'm just randomly putting in with a very good sense of how I feel they should look. And I'm also paying a little bit of attention, of course, to the reference photo in order to do that. So it is well worth taking great care when you're putting reflections in, because you can make them look really heavy, and that's something you don't really want to do. So it is well worth, as I say, taking the time. Okay, well, I nearly forgot all those lovely yachts in the very far distance. Now I mixed up some of the blue that I've been using and added just a tiny bit of indigo to it to make them a little darker. And I'm using my rigger, and I'm just trying to make the shapes of the sails quite fleeting, not too detailed. They are there and almost not there. They need to be present, of course, and you need to get them on that lovely horizon line, because you can't actually see any sea beyond them. They are almost on the top of the horizon. Now the actual number of yachts that you want to put into your painting is entirely up to you. You can follow the photo reference as I've shown you in the bottom corner and add the exact number that's in that reference, or you can put as many or as few as you really wish to. One thing I would say though, it is well worth making the numbers that you put in an odd number. There's something about odd numbers over even numbers in anything, whether it's photography or in painting. Indeed, you can see the figures in the front foreground are an odd number. Well, that's of course if you exclude the little baby being held, but they are essentially an odd number. All I'm doing now is adding a little bit of that blue color as some sort of reflection. You can't really see any reflections, it's just a little bit of a sense of reflection. And I'm adding in now some more detail into the waves. Having plotted the people, having got them where I want them in my painting, I'm just now refining those little ripply waves that are coming in between them and around their feet. Just adding in a little bit more of the raw sienna and a little bit of ochre just to warm up those greens and take them away from the cooler blues of the rest of the sea. And I feel that that lovely yellow greenish hue in those waves where they're just rolling over on themselves really works very, very well. Now I'm going back to some of those lovely dark colours, the warm darks, the cool darks, and I'm just checking all those figurative shapes that I've got. Do I need to add anything? Do I need to build something out, change the angle of an arm or thicken a limb? All those questions are going through my head as I look at them. What do I need to do to make them even better, more realistic? Or have I achieved that? So where can I go to now? And what I've decided to do is to put a little bit of dark on the foreshore, dampness, little bits of weed that have sort of washed in on the tide that's coming in, little bits of dark in the water that have not quite been submerged under the incoming tide. So that's all I'm doing. I'm just refining some of those shapes and giving a greater degree of contrast between the sand and the sea. And the trick with that is it actually makes the whites or the lights right on that lead edge of the surf stand out and punch above its weight. Because you're making something darker, it means to say that everything around that is light appears much, much lighter. Okay, so the very final part of this painting is adding some body color, the highlights that we need that are or may be missing from our painting. Now I'm using white gouache, but you can quite easily use white acrylic or even Chinese white as a watercolor if you would prefer it. But the use of white as highlights should never be overused. Having said that, I really went to town on this painting. I didn't actually mean to when I started out with the body color with the white gouache, but it just ended up that way. I just saw more and more little opportunities to put big punchy white statements against the darks and creating the ultimate levels of contrast. But to me, that just played with the light and the Contrejour. Now I did say I was going to talk to you about Contrejour, and I haven't really mentioned it. But Contrejour quite literally means painting into the light. As far as I'm aware, it's quite a modern thing to do. I don't think the Impressionists really favoured doing that very much. They like full sun, or they even like flat days where the colour was so much more intense. And the thing about Contrejour, when you look into the light, the amount of colour you see actually reduces, but the contrast increases, and you often see the extremes of that when you look into a sunset and all you see in the foreground are silhouettes. That's the degree of contrast at its most extreme, because the Contrejour effect is also at its most extreme. But here I started putting so much more white in, and I was having so much fun, and I just wanted to add more glisten, more sparkle on the water, and I was just having a ball with this. And so I have to say that I really got very close to putting too much in, but I did stop just in time. The thing is that I feel that adding that white really did enhance the light effects on this painting, and I wanted to convey this Contrejour effect of almost silhouetted people in this very bright sunny day, and I think I brought that off, and I'm really happy with the final result of this little painting. So if you really have enjoyed this painting and enjoyed the processes that I've shown you to complete it, then please, why don't you give the video a big thumbs up? That really does help the channel grow. And if you're not a subscriber, it doesn't cost you anything to do that. Just subscribe to the channel, and again, it helps YouTube understand that I'm well worth supporting, and many more people get to see my video, and that would be awesome. The reference for this will be over on my Patreon, so you can pop on over there and download it and freely use it. You do not need to be a patron to do that. Just simply add it to the Painting with Paul apps if you want to over on Facebook, and showcase your work from my tutorials over there. But while you're on Patreon, why not check it out? It's adding all the time. There are well over 130 plus videos, full length, fully narrated, and more are becoming exclusive. There is also a very private members page on Facebook where you can ask questions, show your work that you created, and get help from me and interact with each other. So it's really well worth taking a look. I don't think I've ever added so much highlight white gouache to any of my watercolor paintings, but I am bringing this one to an end. Just those final touches, those little nuances of the light between a limb, something like that, that just adds that extra bit of detail without too much work. Anyway, I'm going to wish each and every one of you all the very best. Happy painting, stay safe. I'll catch each and every one of you next Friday at 3 o'clock. So take care. All the best for now. Bye bye. Channel. Now today, no, not today, not tomorrow either. This is going to be the outtake special. Hi everybody, and Contrejour. No, that's too long-winded. Hi everyone, and my painting channel. Summer's coming, so I did think. Now, invariably, when you got a lovely summer day, summer's day, take a. That was going so well.